May 17th, 2015, Twin Peaks, Waco, Texas. What was supposed to be a routine biker meeting turned into a bloodbath. The Cossacks and the Bandidos, two clubs with a long-standing rivalry, showed up armed and ready, and it didn't take much for things to spiral. A shove, an argument, then fists, knives, and finally gunfire. As the dust settled, 9 were dead, 18 wounded, and more than 170 bikers were in handcuffs. Investigators recovered over 300 weapons, and security footage captured the chaos as it unfolded. This is the story of the Cossacks versus the Bandidos. To understand the beef between the Cossacks and the Bandidos, we need to rewind a bit. The Bandidos were founded in 1966 by Vietnam veteran Donald Chambers in San Leon, Texas. They had grown into one of the largest outlaw motorcycle clubs in the world, with over 175 chapters across 20 countries. The Texas Department of Public Safety even classified them as a Tier 2 threat, right up there with the Crips, Bloods, and Aryan Brotherhood. The Bandidos were everywhere, and crucially, Texas was their home turf. One of the key symbols of their control was the Texas bottom rocker patch, which for decades only the Bandidos were allowed to wear. Anyone else trying to sport it was seen as directly challenging their territory. Now here's where the tension really started. A former Bandido sergeant-at-arms testified that the Bandidos Austin chapter had actually given the Cossacks permission to wear the Texas bottom rocker. But the Cossacks didn't stop there, as they made their patch bigger. To many Bandidos, that wasn't just a mistake, but a direct slap in the face. Court documents show that by 2013, John Portillo, the national vice president of the Bandidos, had declared the club at war with the Cossacks. Even though the Bandidos were far larger nationally and internationally, the Cossacks were no strangers to Texas. They were founded just 3 years after the Bandidos in 1969 in East Texas, and at the time, they had about 200 members going toe-to-toe with the Bandidos. So when war was declared in 2013, the Bandidos and Cossacks engaged in a power struggle. In March of that year, things started heating up. A group of Cossacks ran a Bandido off the road and beat him so badly with chains and metal pipes that he almost lost an eye. That same day at a gas station, another confrontation went down. A few Bandidos spotted a Cossack who just so happened to be the son of a local politician and told him to take off his Texas rocker. When he refused, they responded by smashing his head with a hammer. In November of that year, 2 Cossacks were stabbed in a parking lot outside a roadhouse. The local Bandidos chapter president ended up getting arrested in connection with the attack. The Cossacks weren't the only ones challenging the Bandidos' dominance. Other clubs, like the Ghost Riders out of Fort Worth, also started wearing the Texas bottom rocker. That didn't sit well with Howard Wayne Baker, president of the Fort Worth Bandidos chapter. He saw it as a direct challenge, one that needed to be dealt with. On the night of December 12, 2014, members of the Cossacks, Ghost Riders, and Wino's crew were partying at a bar called Gators. When Baker got word, he and about 20 other Bandidos stormed in, armed with hammers, baseball bats, and other weapons, and launched a brutal attack. Ghost Riders member Jeffrey Brady was thrown outside, where he was brutally beaten. Then, one of the Bandidos pulled out a gun and executed him right there in front of his wife and friends. In the weeks leading up to the Waco shootout, the FBI field office in Dallas tracked at least a dozen violent incidents, bike-on-bike assaults, roadside ambushes, and weapons being drawn in broad daylight. Apparently, both clubs were given orders to kill on sight. During this time, the Texas Council of Clubs and Independents was still moving forward with its scheduled meeting. In theory, these gatherings were meant to be neutral ground, a place where motorcycle clubs, from weekend cruisers to full-blown outlaw organizations, could talk about shared issues like biker rights, safety legislation, and law enforcement overreach. The Bandidos, as founding members and the most influential club at the table, typically held a lot of sway in how those meetings went. But the May 17th meeting was different. In the past, Region 1 gatherings were held in Austin, a relatively safe zone. This time, the Bandidos decided to move it to Waco, a city that was increasingly seen as Cossack territory. The choice to hold the meeting in Waco wasn't accidental. Whether it was a flex by the Bandidos or a setup depends on who you ask, but either way, it was a deliberate move that guaranteed tension. The Cossacks weren't invited to the meeting, at least not officially. Some say a high-ranking Bandidos member baited them into showing up, claiming he wanted to smooth things over. Others claim the Cossacks came on their own to send a message and wanted to make it clear that this was their turf now. Local police and state agencies had been monitoring the build-up for weeks. evidence. They had informants. They had warnings. They knew this wasn't just a community barbecue, but instead of shutting it down, they treated it like a live experiment, just watching from the sidelines to see if it would all go up in flames. And that brings us to May 17th, 2015. The Council of Clubs and Independents meeting was scheduled for 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the patio at the Twin Peaks restaurant in Waco. On the surface, it might have looked like just another biker meetup. Inside, some smaller, non-affiliated clubs were grabbing drinks and having a good time. But outside, things were already heating up. Around 80 Cossacks had shown up an hour early, lined up, ready, and waiting. However, when the Cossacks arrived, they didn't just encounter their rivals. They also found SWAT team members and law enforcement already surrounding the restaurant, watching from a distance, waiting for that first punch, that first gunshot, and they didn't have to wait long. By early afternoon, a group of bandidos rolled into the lot. Almost immediately, tensions snapped. Several Cossacks confronted the arriving bandidos, some reportedly pulling pistols. One Bandidos member, Reginald Weathers, would later testify that things escalated over something as petty as a parking spot. According to him, Dallas Bandidos President David Martinez was disrespected as soon as they pulled in. When Reginald stepped in to back up his president, he says he got punched and then shot. The bullet tore through his arm and into his chest. He didn't even see who fired it. Another Bandido reportedly ran over a Cossack foot with his bike. In an instant, the Cossacks pulled out weapons, knives, brass knuckles, batons, and pistols. The Bandidos didn't hesitate to match force with force. That's when things went from heated to all-out brawl. Both sides rushed in, punching, kicking, stabbing, while others scrambled for cover. Then the gunfire started. Witnesses said that at first it sounded like pistols, but that didn't last. Soon, heavy automatic rifle fire drowned out everything else. A SWAT officer exiting his vehicle with his rifle narrowly dodged a bullet that hit his car door. Looking through his scope, he saw a man pull out a revolver and aim it at someone already down on the ground. Without thinking, the officer shot him in the head. Another officer, taking cover behind his car door, shot a biker who kept firing. When the biker didn't stop, the officer shot again. When it was all over, the scene outside Twin Peaks looked like a war zone. As officers moved in to secure the area, bikers either raised their hands in surrender or lay on the ground, prone with their hands on their heads. Some shouted for help. Others tried their best to perform CPR on the wounded. Meanwhile, the rock music that had been playing throughout the chaos still blared. That day, 9 men lost their lives in Waco. 7 Cossacks, 1 Bandido, and 1 man that was not affiliated with either club. 3 of the bodies were found in the parking lot outside the restaurant, 4 more in front of a nearby building, and 1 dragged behind a neighboring restaurant. The 9th passed at the hospital. The entire firefight had lasted barely 2 minutes. Bullet fragments from police weapons were later found in the bodies of 4 of the 9 bikers, though some had mixed fragments from other guns as well. This left the question of who exactly fired the fatal shots. As police tightened their grip on the scene, those still standing had little choice but to comply. Some bikers surrendered willingly, while others were forced into submission. A Bandido chapter president later revealed the brutal reality of the aftermath, that officers prevented anyone from helping the wounded. Despite the fact that 3 men were bleeding out in front of them, not a single law enforcement officer offered aid. They made it clear that any attempt to assist would be met with force. Those men could have been saved, he said. If they'd gotten help within 30 or 40 minutes, they might still be alive. Police recovered around 320 weapons from the scene, everything from pocket knives and brass knuckles to handguns, and even a Kalashnikov rifle. 192 people were arrested in connection with the shootout. The bikers were taken to the Waco Convention Center. Officers sorted them based on the patches and colors on their vests, placing them in separate rooms. Their hands were zip-tied behind their backs, restrained and unsure of what would come next. At first, authorities treated the case as a capital murder investigation. Bikers weren't given Miranda warnings. They were considered witnesses. A member of a Cossack support club called the Scimitars said that the police told the bikers they were simply going to give statements and then be released. Defense attorney Paul Looney later said the process initially seemed reasonable. With proper statements, forensics, and video evidence, individual cases could have been built. But the situation changed. District Attorney Abel Rayner initially wanted everyone wearing club colors arrested. A generic arrest affidavit was quickly drafted, linking each individual to the incident based on their group membership membership and symbols. The same document was used for every person arrested, only the names were handwritten on the top. If convicted, each faced a sentence ranging from 15 years to life in prison. After the arrests, most bikers remained in jail due to a lack of lawyers and million-dollar bonds. National attention brought in pro bono attorneys who pressured authorities to lower bail. Still, it took over 5 months to free the last biker, and not one was charged with murder. Prosecutors faced a challenge. How do you convict 171 people with no solid evidence? The guns found were legally owned, and no one could confirm who fired first. In a stand-your-ground state like Texas, self-defense was a strong legal shield. 2.5 years after the shootout, prosecutors finally took a shot at convicting someone: Jake Carrizal of the Dallas Bandidos. He seemed like an easy target, violating bail, lying about carrying a gun, and sending an incriminating text the day of the Waco shootout saying, "I'm not far away if you need me and I'm packing." But in court, Jake claimed the Cossacks started the fight and insisted he only fired in self-defense. After 14 hours of deliberation, the jury couldn't reach a verdict. The Waco Police Department faced heavy backlash for its handling of the incident. Critics accused them of violating constitutional rights by arresting people simply for wearing biker colors, something that isn't actually illegal. Then came the conspiracy theories. Some witnesses claimed they saw a man in a Cossacks jacket firing a gun, only for him to later be wearing a badge and making arrests. Others reported that 2 Cossacks inside the restaurant ditched their cuts and revealed police badges when the shooting started. The bigger issue, though, was the lack of transparency. Police refused to release body cam footage, dragged their feet on evidence requests, and insisted officers only fired 12 shots. But eyewitnesses, who were actually there, unlike the police chief, said they heard automatic gunfire, and the only ones carrying automatic weapons that day? Law enforcement. Despite insisting that bikers had fired at them, police never provided any proof. What they did admit, however, was that of the 9 bikers killed, 4 had been shot by law enforcement. District Attorney Abel Rayner found himself at the center of a scandal. He was under FBI investigation. A former assistant DA accused him of protecting his political allies and campaign donors, actively dismissing cases against them. Rayner dismissed it all as fake news, but his actions told a different story. When a lawyer tried to subpoena him for testimony regarding the allegations, Rayner responded by dismissing the entire case, because if there was no case, he couldn't be forced to answer questions under oath. In the 2018 election, Rayner was defeated by Barry Johnson, who pledged to reassess the remaining cases. Upon taking office, Johnson reviewed the pending cases and concluded that the evidence was insufficient to meet the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He dismissed all remaining charges, stating that further prosecution would be a waste of resources. Johnson's decision marked the end of the legal pursuit related to the shootout, resulting in no convictions for the incident that left 9 dead and at least 20 injured.